Scarlett Elfandimian as engagement to Prince Kil was arranged by their families through a pre-birth agreement. Yet, this long-standing agreement was abruptly shattered during an elegant ball when Kelly unilaterally ended their engagement. His reason was his exasperation with Scarlett, as he now desired to be with his mistress, Teresa, leaving Scarlett aghast by his treachery. The party ghost applauded Kelly and Teresa when he announced this imminent marriage to her, a reaction Scarlett found incomprehensible. She couldn't fathom, though everyone could support this scoundrel who had just discarded his fiancé, but the underlying motive soon became clear to her. Kelly lauded Teresa as a compassionate and intelligent woman, contrasting her with Scarlett, whom he described as emotionless. He declared that finding a joyful engagement to Scarlett for the past 17 years had been the most shameful period of his existence. Expressing immense relief, he stated his happiness at finally being rid of her. But Scarlett, unwilling to yield, remained key. She pointed out that their parents had arranged the engagement, and they lacked the authority to annul it independently. Kelly retorted that he could indeed terminate the betrothal. They claimed he had no honest concern, alleging that Scarlett was a minor offender who had been tormenting Teresa due to envy. Teresa then adopted a victim persona as Kelly detailed Scarlett as supposed bullying of her on the academy grounds, a claim Scarlett immediately dismissed as false. Scarlett argued that this was their first in-person encounter, as they attended different classes. However, Kay, possessing limited intellect to begin with, having seemingly lost his remaining wits after falling for Teresa, he mistakenly believed Scarlett was attempting to disparage his new fiancé. He interpreted her statement about Teresa being in the regular class, while Scarlett was in the elite class, as an insult. He recounted Teresa as tales of Scarlett's past aggressions. These alleged acts included Scarlett locking her in a restroom and shoving her down a staircase, leading him to burn Scarlett a heartless antagonist. Having endured enough of this immature man as insults, Scarlett informed Kay. She declared her indifference to his accusation and her willingness to accept the annulment of their engagement. Nevertheless, she requested one last concession from Kelly before their relationship concluded permanently, a request the prince was reluctant to grant. Yet, Teresa, assured of her triumph, urged him to listen to the pitiful woman to ensure Scarlett had no lingering regrets. Kelly, swayed by Teresa's apparent magnanimity, then asked Scarlett her desire. She slowly approached them, clenching her hand into a tight fist. She informed Kelly that her ultimate wish was to strike Teresa in the face, a declaration that visibly startled him. He questioned her sanity, but instead of responding, Scarlett delivered a forceful punch to Teresa's face. The strike was executed with such impeccable form that even legendary boxer Muhammad Ali would have admired it. However, this singular act of aggression was preceded by an extensive history, and to fully appreciate its significance, we must delve into its entirety. From a young age, Scarlett harbored a strong inclination for physical altercation regularly. She would frequently incapacitate an unlucky individual with her bare hands. Her brother, Leonardo, consistently admonished her for her aggressive inclinations. Scarlett, however, maintained that her actions served a higher purpose. While Leonardo acknowledged that Scarlett had recently rescued a commoner from a spoiled noble, he couldn't erase the image of her appearance. Covered in blood, he reminded her that she was soon to be introduced to noble society at an upcoming ceremony and ordered her to choose her violent behavior and conduct herself as a proper lady, a directive that would present the most formidable challenge for Scarlett, especially when she first encountered the unbearable Kelly at the ceremony, where he immediately declared she would be his servant. From that day forward, Scarlett had to exert immense self-control to suppress her urge to punch him, knowing he was both the nation's second prince and her designated fiancé. This marked the onset of her torment, as Kelly persistently harassed and pranked her, while her family's circumstances prevented her from retaliating. Even her father was powerless to intervene, given their involvement with the royal family, forcing Scarlett to endure years of abuse. Upon reaching 15, she enrolled in the National Academy, achieving excellent grades and rapidly gaining popularity. Regrettably, Kelly was also present, and they publicly announced that she would continue to serve him as his personal attendant. By this point, however, Scarlett had grown impervious to his harassment and outbursts, maintaining a stoic expression. When interacting with him, a few days later, Kelly burst into her classroom in a terrible temper and began verbally assaulting her. Demanding she purchase his luncher, Scarlett apologized and promptly agreed to his request. Yet, the obnoxious prince remained unsatisfied, forcibly dragging her away for punishment, leaving his associates to monitor the other girls. To prevent them from reporting to the teacher, Scarlett soon discovered that Kelly's anger stemmed from his demotion to the standard class due to his poor academic performance, and they sought to release his frustration on her. He resolved to cut her hair and present it to his class as a trophy. Given Scarlett's considerable patins was severely tested by his Archie, she warned him to desist, or she would inform her family, but Kelly responded by disparaging her father. Referring to him as morally a subservient lackey to the royal family, Scarlett was on the verge of violently dispatching him. Fortunately, Prince Julius, the firstborn, was nearby and promptly intervened to halt the confrontation. Kelly, powerless before his elder brother, departed after receiving a reprimand. Scarlett, however, would eventually return to torment her. Nevertheless, she expressed gratitude to Julius for his intervention. Will responded that he was merely protecting his younger brother before engaging Scarlett in casual conversation. Scarlett, in turn, developed respect for his commendable character, recognizing Prince Julius as the leading contender for the throne. However, the Thorold nobility, fearing Julius, threw their support behind Kelly. Meanwhile, Scarlett initially held the first prince in high regard. This respect quickly soared into envy when she discovered Julius had achieved flawless scores across every subject, thereby shattering her rank as the top student. Scarlett initially believed Julius to be extraordinarily gifted and dedicated, but her perception shifted when he casually approached her, boasting about the ease of attaining perfect grades. Infuriated, she took his command as a personal affront and redoubled her efforts to surpass him in their next encounter. Whispers soon spread that Julius had deliberately allowed himself to lose. The supposed reason for his intentional defeat was to make her happy, which only intensified Scarlett's frustration, prompting her to completely disregard him. Despite her efforts, Julius persisted in bothering her, even trailing her after classes to question the status of her relationship with Kelly. It then dawned on Scarlett that Kelly had ceased his attempt to harass her recently, despite the public embarrassment he had suffered just days prior. She understood Julius's persistent attention was a tactic to deter Kelly, and this realization almost made her view him in a more favorable light. Julius then abruptly began to flirt with her, and Scarlett might have been charmed had he not referred to her as an interesting creature. His peculiar comments startled her, but it soon became clear that Julius was being sincere. He genuinely considered Scarlett an intriguing being worthy of study, even meticulously documenting his observations about her. It was at this precise moment that her hatred for Julius truly ignited. She harbored a strong desire to punch both him and Kelly in the future, returning to the present. All her pent-up fury finally found a release, manifesting as a powerful blow to Terrence's face. With a single puncher, Scarlett sent Terrence sprawling, simultaneously knocking out two other individuals. Kelly, witnessing this, panicked and demanded to know what she was doing, to which Scarlett responded with chilling composure that his cruel comments had provoked her, and Terrence was merely paying the consequences. Second advance towards the assembly of astonished nobles. Fully took design that each person among them was a corrupt scoundrel. Her anger flared because they had rejoiced. Their WHANPLS Ngejimenu was called off. Consequently, she donned her ever-present punching gloves, which she always carried. In response to the escalating situation, the nobles panicked and summoned the guard, but Scarlet swiftly incapacitated them with a burst of magic. Before she began systematically pummeling the nobles, they started desperately pleading for protection, even offering their slaves as a bribe. Even though slave trading was outlawed in the kingdom, Scarlet recognized these individuals as irredeemable, worthless scum, and felt no moral qualms about rendering them all unconscious. Cool. She activated her unique time magic to enhance her speed, commencing her furious assault with her fists, which were metaphorically rated for every unit. Before long, every noble lay incapacitated on the ground. The sole remaining individual had already soiled himself. Having witnessed Scarlet as terrifying true nature, she informed him that his turn had arrived. Just as her fist was about to charge, her brother Leonardo rushed in to intervene, but he was too late, and Scarlet sent Calafrey into our with a powerful punching. Scarlet felt remarkably invigorated, while Leonardo was aghast at the sight of the nobles thrown across the floor. Julius, however, found the situation highly amusing. Scarlet felt a strong urge to strike Julius as well, but she opted against such an extreme action for the moment. Instead, she approached Julius and Leonardo to greet them. They inquired about the cause of her violent outburst. Initially, Scarlet responded with a measured, almost a tone, stating that the nobles had committed unspeakable atrocities and, upon attempting to justify themselves, she had administered immediate punishment. However, when Julius pressed her for precise details, she simply retorted that they had provoked her, leading her to incapacitate them. Leonardo suffered a minor shock upon hearing this, but Julius burst into laughter, lamenting that Chamraf hadn't been invented yet, as he desperately wanted to witness how Scarlet had single-handedly subdued all the nobles. He remarked that she ought to have waited for his arrival. Before commencing her sluggish, Scarlet, however, dismissed this as an unreasonable demand. Concurrently, her brother began to descend into a state of panic. As he contemplated the repercussions, Julius, Tauge, reassured him that he would manage the situation. Suddenly, Scarlet began to feel lightheaded. Man collapsed, with Julius swiftly catching her head just before it struck the floor. Scarlet regained consciousness 3 days later, to the sound of ringing bells in her mind. As her awareness slowly returned, she comprehended that she had overexerted the power bestowed upon her by renowned the deity of Time. Nevertheless, the instant she opened her eyes, she discovered a maid positioned above her, brandishing a knife. Scarlet calmly inquired about the maid's identity, but the maid shrieked and attempted to stop her. However, the maid was no match for that as well projects they were asking her, presently, a power returned to her. Learners A. Upon hearing a loud commotion emanating from his sister's chamber, and was utterly appalled to witness that her very first action after regaining consciousness was to punch Simeon. Regardless, he expressed his profound worry for her, just as Julius entered the room. After Scarlet had refreshed herself, Julius informed her that her engagement to Kyle had been formally terminated. With the consent of both their families, Kyle had been disinherited from the royal family association, due to his complicity in shielding nobles involved in illegal slave trading. Furthermore, all the nobles present at the party had also been apprehended. Scarlet was visibly pleased with this news. She then inquired of Julius if she, too, would face punishment. He assured her that she was far too vital to the royal family as interested to be subjected to any penalty. However, he added that until this incident faded from public memory, She would likely encounter difficulty finding a suitor willing to marry her, nevertheless. He also had some positive news to share. Julius informed Scarlett that her recent actions had rapidly become a renowned tale throughout the entire kingdom, with people discussing her as if she were a legendary vigilante. They had christened her the Bloodstained Lady. Guo, with her bare fist, had dispatched countless corrupt nobles to prison, making her a hero in the eyes of the populace. Liu, however, was distraught upon hiring yet another luminous nickname for his sister. But Julius quickly added that there were still more to come. Their initial priority involves addressing crucial matters, particularly concerning the numerous high-profile individuals among the apprehended nobility. Many of these hold official government positions, yet their most significant obstacle is the Prime Minister, a staunch backer of Kelly's group. Julius reveals that the monarch, harboring suspicions about corruption within Kelly's faction, established an entity known as CIU-2. This organization was created to conduct investigations, and Liu currently leads it. Subsequently, he summons one of their operative, this agent, the first to penetrate Kelly's faction and gather crucial intelligence, is revealed to be Sigurd. Sigurd, a subordinate of Kelly, promptly offers an apology to Scarlett for his past disrespectful conduct. Scarlett retorted that his performance merits an HADA award. As he elaborates on his convincing action, Sigurd grows increasingly uneasy. Julius then grants her permission to strike him. This is offered as a way to move past their history, and Scarlett accepted. Nevertheless, she merely delivers a gentle tap to Sigurd as she. Her leniency stems from the fact that he had frequently come to her aid during his tenure with Kelly. Afterward, she departed, understanding that she is at last unconstrained and can pursue her desires. Having severed ties with Kelly, her immediate objective is to question the domestic servant. This might have attempted to assassinate her earlier that morning. Scarlett proceeds to the warehouse where Jemite, Nanaka, is confined. However, she discovers the maid has set her at bay. Abruptly, a wild felon looms at her. Scarlett swiftly subdues the animal and discerns that the maid was, in fact, a shape-shifting beastful. He instructs Nanaka to refer to human shape for conversation, revealing that the maid was a male all along. This individual is resolute in his intent to eliminate Scarlett, and she deduces this is due to the slave crest etched on his chest. This crest compels him to follow his master's every command. She inquired if Nanaka would be willing to disclose all information regarding his master, provided she can liberate him. He challenges her to attempt in, which Scarlett interprets as an affirmative. She promptly restrains him to the ground, then employs her abilities to ruin the temporal effects on his slave crest. In this realm, every human is born with divine favor, so must remain unaware of which deity bestowed their blessing. Individuals who become cognizant of this are able to wield the powers granted by their respective goddess. Scarlett, specifically, is blessed by Cronon, the deity of time. This divine connection is, with the royal family holds her in such high esteem. She utilizes Crono as power to revert Nanaka as physical form, to its state prior to his enslavement, though this exertion leaves her fatigued. Regardless, Nanaka upholds his part of the agreement. He informs Scarlett that Prime Minister Godwin was the one who dispatched him. Godwin's son had been one of Scarlett's casualties at the recent gathering. Consequently, Godwin commanded Nanaka to assassinate him, though Nanaka had been assigned to spy on her family much earlier. Nanaka reveals to Scarlett that Godwin is a cunning individual who dispatches agents to all noble households to uncover their confidential information. He then blackmails them into participating in slave transactions, thereby ensnaring them further in his schemes. This revelation is sufficient for Scarlett. She prepares to confront Godwin at his residency. Nanaka orders her to reconsider, citing Godwin is constant entourage of guards. However, This deterrent fails to dissuade Scarlet, prompting the former servant to suggest an alternative. He advises her that a more opportune moment to confront Godwin would be aware when he attends as live action, while he does not yet know the exact location. He assures Scarlet he can connect her with the slave trader. He is prepared to go to any lengths to exact vengeance upon the individual who enslaved him and numerous others of his kin. Scarlet readily accepts his assistance and brings him with her. Unbeknownst to them, Julius has overheard their entire strategy. A few days later, Scarlet and Nanaka venture into the impoverished district to locate the slave trader. There, she mentions acquiring a piece of mithril from a shell for a single gold coin. Nanaka informs her she was defrauded. Scarlet, however, dismisses his claim. She then addresses Julius, who had joined them uninvited. Initially, he states his desire to understand his populace better, believing it will aid his development as a monarch. Yet, under Scarlet's persistent questioning, he admits to having overheard their discussion and recognizes they currently pass up the entertaining prospect of witnessing some individuals being thoroughly beaten. At that moment, a group of ruffians approaches. Scarlet becomes eager, anticipating a choice to engage in combat. However, Nanaka advises her to curb her aggressive impulses, asserting he can negotiate their way out of the situation. He approaches the ruffians, offering payment if they let him to a trader named Jonah. He declined, refusing to conduct business with individuals they perceive as weak. They recount how I should inform them that a foolishly wealthy woman purchased a mere stone from him for a gold coin. Deciding to exploit it, they also assaulted the boy and confiscated his gold coin and roti. This act was meant to demonstrate that the powerful exploit the vulnerable. Hearing this enraged Scarlet, who determines Jasmine warrant abating. She amplifies her strength, then employs her abilities to boost her speed, swiftly incapacitating 3 of the ruffians. She then focuses her intimidating aura on the remaining 2, who quickly grasp they are confronting the notorious, aggressive noblewoman. Scarlet fells the melee with the Apache, then confronts the final bandit, the one who declared the strong prey on the way. Stat, according to his own reasoning, she is at liberty to do as she pleases with him. He pleads for clemency, vowing to return the money to the jail. Scarlet informs him he can fulfill that promise after enduring a beating, but the ruffian promptly offers the slave trader as whereabouts as leverage. However, he unwisely divulges the location without delay. Scarlet expresses her gratitude before rendering him unconscious. She then glances back at Julius, who is abounding her. Julius inquired about his whereabouts during her skirmish, then asked if he ought to festivity. They started promptly together. Subsequently, Julius chose to confront the slave trader, June, personally, apprehensive that Jung might recognize Nanaka or that Scarlet would severely assault him. Within minutes, he successfully extracted information from Jung by employing bluff and threat. He uncovered the venue for the upcoming slave auction and unloaded check where Julius a prospectus London to capture her fund. That it was preferable to being a violent lunatic. Nanaka must whether the situation aligned with the enemies to lovers trope he had often heard about. However, Scarlet and Julius unexpectedly aligned, jointly soliciting his ideas for infiltrating the action. Shortly thereafter, Scarlet paid a visit to a nobleman named Zathurin, who was, in fact, the slave trader, whose contact information June had supplied. Zathurin appeared genuinely pleased to encounter a new client, but he nonetheless informed Scarlet that it was unbefitting a lady to engage with a low-status individual like Jung simply to make contact with him. Considering she could have inquired about his whereabouts from a noble acquaintance, Scarlet retorted that it was no longer pertinent. She then questioned Zathurin about his connection to June. Zathurin explained he had no formal business relationship, stating he had simply employed June. To procure any potentially valuable enslaved individuals who appeared in the slums. Scarlett inquired what he meant by that statement. He responded that dwarfs, elves, beastmen, and other distinct species were classified as valuable. He then gestured towards Nanaka, commenting that the beastman was indeed a highly valuable specimen. As Nanaka grew visibly astonished upon hearing this, Scarlett questioned that during about how he had identified her servant as a beastman. He replied that his extensive experience in this profession made it evident, and then he began to lie. Scarlett was nearly provoked into assaulting him then and there, but Nanaka restrained her, reminding her that they needed to adhere to their strategy. Once the repulsive man traced his lawgiver, he inquired of Scarlett what type of slave she was seeking. She informed him that she had learned of an impending slave auction in the capital and wished to attend it. Saturn's expression grew serious upon hearing this, stating that to participate in the auction, she would require verification. This verification process necessitated her revealing her social standing to others within the auction community and either purchasing or selling a minimum of 6 slaves. Scarlett offered him a sum he desired, but Zaturin retorted that money was not the primary concern, instead proposing that, if you were to hand over the best folk slave in her possession, I would escort her to the auction, introducing her as the daughter of a distant relative. Scarlett was utterly incensed with this proposal, yet she managed to control her rage, offering a polite smile as she stated. If this was the sole prerequisite for auction entry, she was prepared to surrender the slave to him. Soon after, Scarlett and Nanaka departed the mansion. She remained astonished that slave trading was conducted so openly within the kingdom. She was also relieved that everything had proceeded according to their plan, and Zaturin had behaved precisely as Nanaka had foreseen. Nanaka, for his part, was also surprised to witness that Scarlett did not resort to violence to resolve all her difficulties, and she began to pinch him playfully for his teasing. As they made their way back home, Scarlett asked Nanaka if he was truly certain about this course of action, because, although she could remove his left crest later, she would be unable to protect him once he was enslaved. Nanaka replied that it sounded as if he was going to be put up for action, and they would not permit anyone to harm his merchandise before they even knew. He added, he was doing this to atone for his attempt on her life, and he suddenly began to yawn. Scarlett realized that best folk were typically active at night and slept during the day, and in the very next instant, Nanaka transformed into his animal form. Falling asleep in Scarlett's arms, she then carried him back to the inn, where Prince Julius was awaiting their return. Scarlett informed him that the negotiations had been fruitful, and he was astonished to hear that she had managed the situation without resorting to violence. Scarlett was already annoyed by this remark. Julius then commented that he should have been present to witness this unusual occurrence of her resolving matters without violence. But a prince of the realm could not openly participate in slave purchase. Scarlett had no intention of engaging fortune with him. So, as soon as she settled Nanaka into bed, she decided to step outside for some fresh air. Julius claimed he had been contemplating the very same thing. He accompanied her, remaining constantly by her side. Scarlett found this irritating. Yet, Julius continued to follow, asserting he had business on that particular strain. Just then, an apple pie vendor called out to Scarlett, announcing an offer for kid girls. If she purchased an apple pie, he would give her a free apple. Julius decided to avail himself of the offer, and bought 2 pieces. Next day, a jewelry merchant attempted to sell her some inexpensive jewelry, which Julius also bought, so that without first haggling. He also made a purchase from a questionable fortune teller. Scarlett then inquired what actual business he had on this trade. Julius responded that he had simply invented that excuse. He then called Scarlett good for believing such an obvious fabrication. She was thoroughly infuriated with him. She punched a nearby wall as she was unable to punch the prince directly in the face. Julius merely chuckled at her reaction. He then offered her an apple pie, which made Scarlet feel as though she were in paradise. Julius then apologized for teasing her, but she retorted that he couldn't earn her forgiveness with just one apple pie. However, adding a second apple pie to the offering achieved the desired result, and Scarlet promptly forgave him. Following this, Scarlet remarked that Julius possessed an exceptional familiarity with the city as layout. Julius confesses to often ditching his lessons to discover the city as nooks and crannies, then inquires about Scarlet's reaction to the marketplace. Scarlet noticed that her previous trips to the market, when Sun Beckel for bread, left her little opportunity for sightseeing. Upon closer inspection, she finds the market to be quite lively and pleasant. Julius expresses his satisfaction that she enjoys it. He reveals that each time he visited, he envisioned sharing the experience with her. Scarlet then pondered if his presence was solely to accompany her. She suspects his only motive was to guide her, believing that a straightforward explanation would have prevented her current annoyance. Without warning, Julius launches into a soliloquy, declaring his profound dislike for Idlena since childhood. His curiosity was exclusively drawn to the peculiar and unconventional, while he was perpetually encircled by dim-witted aristocrats. His nobles constantly vied for his approval, compelling him to feign interest until his gaze fell upon Scarlet. She displayed absolutely no interest in him, and moreover, he observed his younger sibling harassing her. Consequently, he approached her, suggesting he could inform his father if Kelly's actions were causing her distress. Instead, Scarlet offered an unnerving grin, commenting that he had just told a humorous jest, and at that instant, she commanded his complete focus. From that point on, he never ceased to be intrigued by her. He repeats his assertion that the majority of the world's affairs failed to captivate him. His aversion to tedium drives him to cultivate stimulating surroundings, and at this very moment, no one sparks his curiosity more than Scarlet. Following this, he abruptly moves in to kiss her chin, leaving Scarlet utterly bewildered. Julius explains that his affection is the conventional romance, yet he is convinced of his fondness for her and considers her extremely precious. That evening, alone in her chamber, Scarlet remained in disbelief over the recent occurrence. She sank onto her bed, pondering whether the kiss was merely another one of the prince as she missed to vex her. The subsequent day, Scarlet arranges to meet Zach once more. She informs him of her intention to transfer Nanaka into his care, provided he fulfills his commitment. He consented, but prior to that, he demands verification from Scarlet that the enslaved individual is genuinely a baseball. She challenges him, asking if he distrusts her. He retorted that it is merely his established practice to inspect merchandise before finalizing a transaction. Scarlet instructs Nanaka to shop a shift, and he promptly assumes the form of some feline or canine-like animal. Zatar expresses his satisfaction at the siege, and precisely then a formidable, fearsome manwitus emerging from his lower mandible steps into the chamber. He fixes his gaze on Scarlet, inquiring if she is the new slave being admitted. Zack then informs the slave, Donovan, that Scarlet is their patron, and the accompanying baseball is the actual slave. Nanaka's displeasure at Donovan's presence is evident. Scarlet, though, discerns that Donovan is a hybrid of human and magical creature, classifying him as a lycanthrope. Zack offers apologies for his slave as impolite conduit, and subsequently instructs him to remove the beast. Donovan, visibly thrilled by the sight, observes that beastkin possesses remarkable regenerative ability. He fastens a metallic collar around Nanaka's throat and attempts to drag him off. However, Nanaka struggles, provoking Donovan's fury. He brandishes his picket whip, preparing to strike, but then unexpectedly, Scarlet snatches the whip with her ungloved hands. She informed Zeke that his life is surprisingly compliant, and if he is too timid to discipline him, she is capable of doing so herself. Donovan merely sneers, and even Zeke condescendingly tells Scarlett not to antagonize his life. He justifies this by stating Donovan is a former rank adventurer, asserting that she would require the might of a knight captain. To subdue him, Scarlett, bewildered, questions the significance of this fact. Zeke assures he is merely concerned for her safety, but Donovan then proclaims it as past the point of no return. He refuses to allow a woman to trample his honor. He resolves to impart a lesson, attempting to wrench the whip from her grasp. Yet he finds himself unable to dislodge it from Scarlett as unyielding hold. He exerts even greater effort, and Zeke admonishes him to chase his destiny, stating that a family cannot possibly triumph over a male who is significantly heavier. Donovan insists that he is genuinely giving his utmost effort, and then Scarlett questions Zeke whether Donovan will also be offered for sale. The response to the intense storytelling Donovan as his personal protector and an instructor for other enslaved individuals. This development is favorable for Scarlett, as it alleviates her concerns about him diminishing in worth after sustaining injuries. Subsequently, Scarlett abruptly hurls Donovan skyward before launching him with a punch into the upper atmosphere. Zatar is henchmen are utterly stunned by this display, but Scarlett pays him no mind. She fetches Nanako, unfastens his collar, observes his bleeding, and applies her restorative magic to mend his injuries. She embraces him, assuring him of her swift return, and instructs him to bear with the hardship she currently faces. Scarlett addresses the nobleman regarding the shattered window, and he informs her that she is not obligated to cover the repair cost. He even expresses gratitude for her disciplining Donovan, as he consistently struggles with himself. As Scarlett arrives back at her login, she spots a recognizable chariot she parked outside. Her brother exits visibly enraged at her. He instructs her to recount the entire narrative on the arrival at the Capitan, catching sight of Julius within the chariot. She internally berates Julius as an ineffectual prince, incapable of even preventing her brother from learning of their escapades. Upon their arrival in the Capitan, Leo begins consuming potent alcohol at the table, interrogating both Julius and Scarlett about their judgment. He demands to know how they could so flippantly endanger their lives, but Julius counters that their discovery of the slave action as whereabouts justifies their actions. Leo then settles though, before revealing that he, too, conducted investigations, and discovered that Prime Minister Godwin was personally arranging the action. Scarlett informed him the event was scheduled for 2 days later. This news sent Leo into a frenzy, as he began meticulously planning for their crucial mission, while Scarlett, in the interim, found herself gazing intently at Julius. She offered him a smile and inquired if he deserved some apple pie, reminiscing about their previous encounter, but he inexplicably became irritated with her. Leo then interjected, announcing he had devised a strategy. His initial instruction was for Scarlett to return home. However, she flatly refused, stating it was the only thing she couldn't do. Leo speculated her sole motivation was to punch Godwin in the face. Yet, she countered, had her reasons run deeper, explaining that since childhood, she had observed virtuous individuals suffering while wicked aristocrats continued to thrive. She firmly believed that avaricious, malevolent figures could not be disciplined through conventional methods, and felt compelled to address the situation in her own unique way. Abruptly, she stood up, declaring that self-centered and greedy nobles were the most gratifying target for her visitors. Leo and Julius reacted with their customary expressions of alarm at her violent inclinations. Scarlett asserted that ordinary people couldn't challenge nobles, but as the daughter of a high-ranking duke, she would face no repercussions. Julius conjured, much to Leo's dismay, well worried that Scarlett's aggressive nature would tarnish their family standing. A more pressing concern, however, was the potential presence of individuals from the vanquished empire at the action. The possibility of attendance from the vanquished empire at the action presented a significant issue. Both Scarlet and Julius grew tense upon hearing this, as the vanquished empire, being in conflict with their Palestine kingdom for 3 centuries. They were renowned for their ruthlessness, acknowledging only power as a form of hierarchy, and were governed by formidable dragon raiders. Despite the recent peace negotiations between the two nations, Leo had confirmed intelligence that the vanquished Air Force had recently been in communication with Godwin. The striking coincidence, Godwin was simultaneously engaged in a meeting with several officials from the vanquished aerial army, who was enraged at Scarlet for disrupting Kali's party and thwarting their shimmer, ordering his soldiers to eliminate her. The red-haired soldier eagerly accepted the assignment, soaring away on his dragon, but Godwin was displeased by his arrogant demeanor. Just then, a young woman instructed him to disregard the dragon raiders and instead focus on what she had brought. She aimed a firearm at Godwin, but since such weapons had not yet been invented in this world, he had no idea what it was. The girl identified it as a gift from Goddess Palmyra, prompting Godwin to display his own pendant, claiming he already possessed a gift from her. He dismissed the peculiar cylindrical object as harmless, but when the girl fired the pistol, shattering a flower vase, he was utterly stunned. The girl was revealed to be Tarin, Kali's mistress. She ordered Godwin to employ this weapon, capable of vanquishing even the most formidable adversary, to secure victory in his upcoming battles. Soon, the day of the action arrived, and Zack nervously greeted Scarlet at the entrance of the action house. He handed her a mask, which was likely ineffective in concealing her identity, and Scarlet expressed her gratitude. She wished him good fortune for the day's action, yet smirked inwardly, knowing this would be the final action for him and all the contemptible nobles involved. Zatan escorted Scarlet to the main hall, her men occupied with her strategic plans. Upon learning the action as location, Julius had promptly dispatched agents from his organization to infiltrate the venue disguised as servants. However, he was aware they would be unarmed inside the action hall, and even magic would be insufficient to apprehend Godwin. Consequently, they had designated Scarlet as their primary combat operative, because unlike the others, she only required her fist to subdue Anion. With this resolve, Scarlet confidently entered the action hall. Simultaneously, Leonardo and other knights went outside, poised to attack the moment Julius gave the command. Leo felt confident in their preparations, but he silently prayed that Scarlet would honor her promise to avoid unnecessary violence. His stomach churned with anxiety, knowing her inability to control her impulses, and they simply hoped their mission would somehow succeed. Meanwhile, Scarlet overheard the nobles discussing the types of service they desired from the action. Though their preferences varied, they all agreed that the main attraction for the evening was the shape-shifting baseball. Just then, the lights abruptly extinguished. Scarlet inadvertently collided with Amade. He apologized and moved on, but she felt a strange familiarity with his voice. However, she had little time to ponder this as the announcer took the stage, officially commencing the action. He first presented a one-wayed bird woman, and the nobles immediately began bidding. Scarlet observed him from the balcony, barely containing her fury. Suddenly, Julius appeared beside her. She questioned his presence, reminding him he was supposed to be leading the mission, to which he replied came to check on her. Scarlet began to walk away, but Julius followed, asking if she had located Godwin. She admitted she hadn't seen him but had an idea of his whereabouts. Julius urged her to act swiftly, as the royal guests were stationed outside the gate and might seize her target if she delayed. Scarlet immediately proposed a deal. She would provide him with the spectacle of a live team be publicly pummeling Godwin if he would postpone summoning the royal knights. Julius was instantly swayed by her offer. as that was precisely why he had joined the undercover operation. However, merely witnessing the Prime Minister as public humiliation beyond the gate, her objective could be season if she does not act quickly. Scarlett promptly proposes a deal to him. She requested he postpone summoning the Royal Knights, promising an unparalleled spectacle by thoroughly defeating Godwin right before his eyes. Julius is instantly swayed by her proposition, as this very scenario was his motivation for joining the covert fortune. However, simply witnessing the Prime Minister Julius is dissatisfied with just her victory. He presses Scarlett on what she allowed over him to hold back the next orders. After a brief pause, she pledges her lifelong allegiance to the throne and the realm. Julius swiftly dismisses her proposal, clarifying that he isn't seeking her service to the crown. Instead, he tenderly chubs her face, requesting her personal loyalty. Scarlett contrasts that it amounts to the same thing. She reasons that he will eventually be emperor, but Julius expresses his impatience. However, the prince makes his stance unequivocal. He states she won't achieve her goal unless she pledges her allegiance to him immediately. Scarlett relents, declaring her loyalty, which delights Julius. He then inquires about Godwin as whereabouts. Having settled their agreement, Scarlett speculates that Godwin is observing the events from the heights vantage. Julius suggests he has turned to his position, to which Scarlett responds that she is even more eager. Her impatience stems from wanting to confront the corrupt Prime Minister, Manuel, in the prison, guards escort an elven woman away. Her daughter, left behind, tries desperately to follow, but Nanaka restrains her. Nanaka explains it as futile. The girl begins to cry, while other captives implore dating and signs for salvation. However, Nanaka assures them all of their safety. Elsewhere, Scarlett incapacitates the guards with magic, earning Julius as commendation for her skill. She both, reminding him of his victory over her in the academy as magic practicals. Julius secretly enjoys her jealousy. At that moment, they encounter a group of ruffians, and Scarlett instantly recognizes them. She identifies them as Godwin as personal security, deciding to dispatch them as a warm-up. She removes her gloves. She dons her diamond-studded knuckle duster. She doesn't even bother to invoke Chrono SBC for enhanced speed. She swiftly defeats all the Dooku before smashing open the door to the room where Godwin is observing the spectacle. Godwin is with his inner circle. As everyone tries to comprehend the situation, Scarlett strides confidently into the chamber. She discards her mask, informing Godwin that her fists have been able to connect with his patch. Godwin is stunned by her appearance. However, he saw, enraged and seeking vengeance against Scarlett, when lashes a lightning span at her. Julius, however, instantly negates the span with the royal ring. Godwin panics upon recognizing the ring as power to nullify imperial magic. Only the Emperor and Julius possess such an artifact. Julius immediately begins to assert his authority. The corrupt nobles are terrified, realizing their impending doom. Nevertheless, they try to reassure each other. They conclude that the blonde man before them is an impostor. Godwin resolves to swiftly eliminate both him and Scarlett. He orders Aunique's life to be brought forth. Scarlett recognizes the formidable beastman as Donovan. Donovan has shifted into his best form. Godwin instructs Donovan to kill Scarlett and Julius, but at that moment, Sig arrives and slashes Godwin at hand. Scarlett then understands that the man she encountered earlier was Sig, who had been faking loyalty to Kei to infiltrate the action. Overwhelmed with frustration, Godwin orders everyone to attack the intruders. Sigurd, on the other hand, takes command. He instructs Scarlett and Julius to remain behind him. However, Scarlett seizes his collar, pulling him back and declaring the nobles her designated targets. She forbids him from touching them. This declaration seems to excite Sigurd, as Scarlett continues. She assigns him the sole task of fighting Donovan, while she intends to deal with the other villains. He promptly agrees to her directive. Scarlet then revels in her task, tossing nobles about and threatening a whirlwind of chaos. No one dares approach her. Her menacing smell deters them, yet Scarlet systematically confronts each one, even throwing a view of the balcony. During her destructive spree, Leo rushes in shortly after, concerned by the lack of a signal from the prince. He is horrified by the gory scene. Scarlet stands triumphantly amidst a peal of vanquished nobles. Leo believes she has finally become a mass murderer. Scarlet assures him she restrained herself. Sheila reveals that no one is actually there, just them. She observes Sigurd struggling against Donovan. The remaining ghosts flee in throne, and Leo worries some might escape. Julius conjures. He resolves to deploy the knights, but Scarlet reminds him she has not yet dealt with Godwin. Despite her protest, Julius instructs Leo to send the knights after Gaius Scarlet points at its contradictory birthdays. He assures her that she alone will have the privilege of thoroughly bathing the Prime Minister. Leo turns back, hearing this. He demands an explanation. Julius clarifies that he has made a solemn promise to Scarlet, which he intends to fulfill. Leo is astounded, misinterpreting this. Tommy and Julian and Scarlet have exchanged marital vows. He becomes emotional, believing his sister has finally found her life partner. Scarlet, however, is puzzled by his dramatic reaction. Julius recognizes their shared lack of social awareness. He chooses to disregard their confession and signals that he is waiting outside. Soon after, Leo also recovers from his emotional display. He then employs his clairvoyance skill to scan the mansion, locating Godwin and his son making their way to the roof. Immediately afterward, he spots a dragon hovering above the rooftop. The trio then hurries towards the roof. Julius comments that his suspicion about Godwin collaborating with the dragon readers of the vanquished empire has been confirmed. Leo urgently states he must hurry or Godwin will flee, but they are in the basement with 5 floors to ascend. Scarlet, confused, reveals a solution. She removes her footwear and instructs Leo to liberate Nanakam and all other enslaved individuals. Activating her acceleration ability, she clears an entire flight of stairs in a single bound, then ricochets off walls before smashing through a window. With a final surge, she propels herself straight to the rooftop. This immense exertion, however, takes a significant toll on her physique. Despite the strain, both the dragon and Godwin are now within her view, and she is resolute in preventing the old scoundrel's escape. Concurrently, Godwin and his offspring encounter the Dragon Raider, immediately launching into insult. They demand he dismount, deeming him a mere common soldier. Insisting he face them as an equal, their words only infuriate the Dragon Raider, while retorts belabeling them insignificant mortals. He then orders his dragon to intervene. The massive beast responds by sweeping its powerful tail, intending to swat away the two bothersome individuals. However, at that precise moment, Scarlet plummets from above like a shooting star, intercepting and halting the dragon as time. She informs the raider that she won't permit him to harm her personal punching bag, revealing she has already pinned Godwin as sound beneath her foot. With nonchalance, she declares he is next. Unexpectedly, the Dragon Raider dismounted, confessing to Scarlet his astonishment. He never anticipated a young could have his dragon Estein with a single hand. He then curls before her, casting acid his hood. Declaring his instant love, he proposes marriage, stunning all present. Scarlet, however, promptly rejects his offer. She then shoves him aside. In retaliation, the dragon attempts to avenge its master by assaulting Scarlet. Yeah, she seizes its jaw and forces it to the ground. Meanwhile, the Dragon Raider recovers, and witnessing Scarlet's dominance over both him and his beast, his fascination with her intensifies. Barry reiterates his marriage proposal, but she responds by delivering a sharp punch to his abdomen, knocking the wind out of him. The red-haired man persists in extolling her beauty, strength, and elegancy, prompting Scarlet to kick him away once more. Believing this will finally subdue him, she is surprised as he struggles back to his feet, despite barely being able to stand. He still insists Scarlet marry him, cheating her unparalleled strengths. Scarlet, however, admonishes him to change his foolish behavior. She reveals her knowledge of his true identity, Alfheim, the first prince of the Vanquish Empire, who arrived to eliminate the inept Godwin. Godwin reacts with panic upon this revelation. Alfheim sent corroborate Scarlet as assertion, openly stating his purpose was to assassinate Godwin. He understands he also intends to eliminate Godwin as followers, as such traitors pose the gravest danger to the tranquility of both nations. Al hurls his spear at Godwin, aiming for a swift execution, but Scarlet intercepts, shattering the weapon with a kick and ordering him to retreat. The prince swiftly closes the distance, seizing her leg. Scarlet observes that his previous display of weakness was merely an act. His physique appears perfectly fine. She questions his confidence in his resilience, and Alfheim confirms, stating he possesses a divine blessing. This blessing renders his body as hard as steel, making him impervious to physical assault. He informs Scarlet that her attacks will be ineffective against him. He suggests she allow him to dispatch Godwin, but she declines, asserting she has a method to overcome him. Shin abruptly seizes his head and lowers his defenses, misinterpreting her action as an advance for a kiss. Instead, Scarlet forcefully pushes his head downwards. She then strikes him with her full might, delivering multiple key blows to his face. Despite this, Alfheim being completely unharmed. However, upon standing, he begins to feel disoriented, realizing Scarlet has kicked shaft caused a confusion. He stumbles, yet his persistent desperation remains. He once more implores Scarlet to accompany him, arguing that this realm of feeble individuals is beneath her. Nevertheless, she has reached her limit with his incessant chatter. She simply seizes his collar and, activating her abilities, teleports him back to his own kingdom. With that accomplished, Scarlet finally directs her focus to Godwin, who is visibly triumphant. He immediately apologizes for his attempt on her life. He also expresses remorse for employing Terra to sabotage her engagement with Kelly. This latter confession is entirely new information to Scarlet. She then interrogates the minister, asking if he assisted Terra in getting close to Kelly. He begins to respond, warning that if he aided in Kelly's public humiliation that day, he would face severe consequences. Godwin stutters in reply, explaining that he merely followed train as him. Scarlet's curiosity is piqued, and Godwin perceives an opportunity for escape. He offers to provide crucial information in exchange for his freedom, beginning by revealing that Trin is no ordinary girl, but was summoned from an alternate world. By the goddess herself, Scarlet remains skeptical of his veracity, yet this novel piece of information is sufficient to momentarily halt her action. This marks the conclusion of the video. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.